8-year-old Emma Chen had always been an independent child, but lately, her mother Sarah noticed something peculiar about her daughter's walks to school. Every morning, as Emma skipped down Maple Street with her bright yellow backpack bouncing, against her small frame, a golden-brown dog would emerge from somewhere in the neighborhood and trot alongside her. The dog was clearly a stray. His fur was matted in places, his collar was missing, and he had that cautious look that homeless animals develop after months on the street. Yet there was something gentle about him, something almost protective in the way he positioned himself between Emma and the busy road. "Mom, can we keep him?" Emma asked for the 100th time over breakfast, her cereal growing soggy as she gazed out the window where the dog sat patiently by their front gate. Sarah sighed, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. As a single mother working 2 jobs to make ends meet, adding a pet to their small household seemed impossible. "Sweetheart, we've talked about this. We don't know where he came from, if he belongs to someone, or if he's even healthy." But Emma's eyes sparkled with the kind of determination that reminded Sarah of her late husband. "He's not sick, Mom. He's just lonely, like we were before we moved here." The comparison stung because it held truth. After David's unexpected death 2 years ago, Sarah had uprooted their life in Chicago, moving to the small town of Willowbrook, hoping for a fresh start. The transition had been harder on Emma than Sarah initially realized. As Emma headed out for school, Sarah watched from behind the curtain. Sure enough, the dog appeared as if summoned by some invisible signal. He fell into step beside Emma, his tail wagging slightly, ears alert to every sound around them. When they reached the crosswalk, the dog actually sat and waited, as if he understood traffic rules. Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor, was tending to her roses when Sarah stepped outside to collect the mail. "That dog's been showing up for about 3 weeks now," Mrs. Patterson observed, adjusting her wide-brimmed hat. "Never seen anything like it. He walks her to school, then disappears until it's time to walk her home." "Disappears where?" Sarah asked, suddenly curious. "That's the strange part, dear. No one seems to know." That afternoon, Sarah decided to follow at a distance when Emma walked home from school. She parked her car 2 blocks away and watched as her daughter emerged from Willowbrook Elementary, the faithful dog immediately appearing at her side as if he'd been waiting all day. Sarah trailed them, staying far enough back not to be noticed. At the corner of Elm and 3rd Street, something unexpected happened. Instead of continuing toward their house, the dog suddenly stopped and let out a soft whine. Emma knelt down beside him, and Sarah could see her daughter's lips moving as if she were having a conversation. Then, to Sarah's amazement, the dog gently took the strap of Emma's backpack in his mouth and began pulling her in a different direction, toward the older part of town where Sarah rarely ventured. Sarah's maternal instincts kicked in, and she quickly got out of her car to follow on foot. She watched as the dog led Emma down a narrow alley she'd never noticed before, between 2 abandoned storefronts. Her heart raced with concern, but something about the dog's gentle demeanor and Emma's complete trust in him made her hesitate before intervening. The alley opened into a small, forgotten courtyard behind the buildings. What Sarah saw there made her breath catch in her throat. An elderly man sat on a makeshift bench constructed from old wooden crates and a piece of plywood. His clothes were clean but worn, and his weathered hands shook slightly as he reached into a paper bag. The dog immediately ran to him, tail wagging furiously, and the man's face lit up with pure joy. "There's my good boy Rex," the man said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Did you have a good day with your little friend?" Emma sat down beside the man without any trace of fear, pulling a sandwich from her lunchbox. "Mr. Henry, I saved you half of my peanut butter and jelly again. Mom makes the best sandwiches." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Her daughter had been sharing her lunch with a homeless man for 3 weeks, and she'd had no idea. "You're too kind, little angel," Henry said, accepting the sandwich with hands that Sarah now realized shook not from age, but from hunger. "Rex here talks about you all day. Well, not with words, of course, but I can tell." "He's the smartest dog ever," Emma declared, scratching Rex behind the ears. "He knows exactly what time school ends, and he never forgets to pick me up." Sarah remained hidden, watching this tender scene unfold. She saw how the old man's eyes crinkled with genuine affection when he looked at her daughter, and how Rex seemed to serve as a bridge between these two lonely souls. That evening, Sarah couldn't concentrate on anything. She kept replaying the scene in the courtyard, trying to understand how her 8-year-old daughter had developed this secret friendship. When she tucked Emma into bed, she decided to approach the subject carefully. "Honey, tell me about your walk home today," Sarah said, sitting on the edge of Emma's bed. Emma's eyes widened slightly. "It was normal, Mom. Rex walked me home like always." "Rex, is that the dog's name?" "That's what Mr. Henry calls him," Emma said, then immediately clapped her hand over her mouth, realizing she'd revealed too much. Sarah kept her voice gentle. "Who's Mr. Henry, sweetheart?" Tears welled up in Emma's eyes. "Promise you won't be mad? I promise I'll listen to everything you have to say before I react to anything." Emma took a deep breath and told her mother everything. How Rex had first approached her not aggressively, but with a kind of purposeful determination. How the dog had led her to the courtyard where she'd found Henry, who was feeding Rex from a can of dog food that looked like it had been his own dinner. He was so thin, Mom, and Rex looked so worried about him. I could tell they loved each other. But Mr. Henry was giving Rex all his food. Emma's voice broke slightly. "I couldn't just walk away." "So you started sharing your lunch?" Emma nodded. "At first, Mr. Henry didn't want to take it. He said it wasn't right to take food from a child. But I told him that you always pack me too much anyway, and that sharing is what families do." Sarah felt her heart swell with pride and break with concern simultaneously. "Emma, why didn't you tell me about this?" "Because I was afraid you'd make me stop, or that you'd call someone to take Mr. Henry away. He's not dangerous, Mom. He's just sad and alone, like we were after Daddy died." The parallel Emma drew hit Sarah like a physical blow. She realized that her daughter, in her innocent wisdom, had recognized something Sarah had been too busy and stressed to see, that sometimes the people who need help the most are the ones society overlooks. The next day, Sarah made a decision that would change all their lives. Instead of confronting Henry directly, she visited Mrs. Patterson, who had lived in Willowbrook for over 40 years and seemed to know everyone's story. "Henry Morrison?" Mrs. Patterson's expression softened immediately. "Oh, my dear, that man has had such heartbreak. He used to be the high school math teacher here, you know. Taught for 37 years. Sarah was stunned. "What happened to him?" Mrs. Patterson invited Sarah in for tea, and over the next hour, she unfolded Henry's tragic story. He had been a beloved teacher, known for staying after school to help struggling students and coaching the academic decathlon team. He'd been married to his college sweetheart, Margaret, for 42 years. They never had children of their own, but Henry treated every student like family. Mrs. Patterson continued. Then Margaret got sick, cancer. Henry used every penny of their savings trying to save her. When she passed 5 years ago, he couldn't afford to keep their house. Too proud to ask for help, he just disappeared one day. And Rex, that dog showed up about a year ago. Someone said they saw Henry feeding him behind the old grocery store, and from that day forward, they were inseparable. Rex seems to understand that Henry needs taking care of. Sarah felt the pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. "Mrs. Patterson, why would Rex start following Emma to school?" The elderly woman smiled knowingly. "Well, dear, I think that dog recognized something in your little girl. Children who've experienced loss have a different kind of compassion. Rex probably sensed that Emma would understand Henry's situation without judgment. That afternoon, Sarah made another decision. Instead of following secretly, she waited in the courtyard when she knew Emma and Rex would arrive. Henry looked up in alarm when Sarah appeared in the courtyard entrance. His immediate instinct was to stand and back away, but Rex placed himself between Henry and Sarah, not aggressively but protectively. "Please don't run," Sarah said gently. "I'm Emma's mother and I want to talk." Emma looked between her mother and Henry with wide, worried eyes. "Mom, please don't make me stop visiting. Mr. Henry is my friend." Henry's voice was barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, I never asked your daughter for anything. She just started sharing her lunch and I was so hungry I couldn't refuse. But if you want me to stay away from her, I understand. Sarah studied the man before her. Despite his circumstances, she could see the dignity in his posture, the intelligence in his eyes, and most importantly, the genuine care he showed for her daughter. Rex sat at his feet, looking back and forth between the adults as if waiting for a resolution. "Mr. Henry," Sarah said, "I want to thank you." Both Henry and Emma looked confused. "My daughter has been happier these past 3 weeks than she's been since her father died. She comes home with stories about kindness and friendship that have reminded me what's truly important in life." Sarah took a step closer. "I don't want you to stay away from Emma. I want to invite you for dinner." Henry's eyes filled with tears. "Ma'am, I couldn't impose." "You wouldn't be imposing. You'd be accepting friendship from a family that understands what it's like to lose everything and have to start over." Emma jumped up and down. "Really, Mom? Mr. Henry can come to dinner? And Rex too?" "Rex especially," Sarah said, kneeling down to pet the dog who had somehow orchestrated this entire connection. Any dog smart enough to bring people together like this deserves a good meal and a warm bed. That first dinner was tentative but magical. Henry arrived clean-shaven, wearing clothes Sarah suspected he'd washed specifically for the occasion. Rex had clearly been brushed, though Sarah wasn't sure where Henry had managed that. As they sat around Sarah's modest dining table, the conversation flowed more naturally than Sarah had expected. Henry told them about his teaching days, his eyes lighting up as he described his students' achievements. Emma hung on every word, asking questions about math concepts that made Henry beam with the joy of a born educator. "Mr. Henry," Emma said during dessert, "why did you stop teaching?" Sarah tensed, but Henry answered honestly. "Sometimes life throws you challenges that are bigger than you expect, sweetheart. When my wife got sick, I had to make some difficult choices, and eventually I couldn't afford to keep doing the job I loved." "But you're still a teacher," Emma insisted. "You teach me things every day in the courtyard. You taught me about different kinds of birds and about how plants grow in concrete cracks, and about how sometimes helping others helps us feel better too." Henry wiped away tears he couldn't hide. "You're a very wise little girl, Emma." Over the following weeks, dinner invitations became regular occurrences. Sarah learned that Henry had been surviving on odd jobs and the kindness of a few business owners who let him do maintenance work in exchange for small payments. Rex, meanwhile, had become not just Emma's walking companion, but the family dog they'd never planned to have. Word about Henry began to spread through Willowbrook, not as gossip, but as awareness. Mrs. Patterson, it turned out, had been looking for an excuse to help Henry for months, but hadn't known how to approach him without damaging his pride. The principal of Willowbrook Elementary, Mrs. Rodriguez, remembered Henry from his teaching days in the neighboring district. When Sarah mentioned his situation, Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes lit up with possibility. "We've been looking for a math tutor for our after-school program," she told Sarah. "The funding isn't much, but it would be regular income, and Henry was one of the best teachers in the region." The job offer came just as autumn was turning to winter. Henry was hesitant at first, worried that too much time had passed, that he'd forgotten how to connect with students. But Emma, with the confidence only a child can possess, convinced him otherwise. "You never stopped being a teacher, Mr. Henry," she told him. "You just needed new students to find you." Henry's first day back in a classroom was emotional for everyone involved. Sarah and Emma watched through the window as he worked with a group of struggling fifth graders, his face transformed by the joy of doing what he was born to do. Rex waited patiently in the hallway, having somehow been granted special permission to stay with Henry during work hours. As winter melted into spring, the changes in all their lives became undeniable. Henry had not only returned to teaching, but had become one of the most requested tutors at the school. His gentle patience and ability to make complex concepts simple had made him beloved by students and parents alike. The income from tutoring, combined with help from community members who had learned his story, allowed Henry to rent a small apartment just 3 blocks from Sarah and Emma's house. Rex, of course, came with him, though the dog still maintained his daily routine of walking Emma to and from school. Sarah found herself looking forward to their now regular family dinners with Henry. His stories, His wisdom and his genuine gratitude for their friendship had enriched their lives in ways she hadn't expected. Emma was thriving too. Her grades had improved, her confidence had grown, and she'd learned lessons about compassion and community that no classroom could have taught her. One evening in late spring, as they sat on Sarah's front porch watching Emma and Rex play in the small yard, Henry turned to Sarah with an expression of deep gratitude. "I want you to know," he said quietly, "that you and Emma saved my life. Not just from hunger or homelessness, but from despair. I had given up on the idea that I mattered to anyone." Sarah shook her head. "Henry, you had it backwards. Emma and I were the ones who were saved. We were so focused on just surviving after David's death that we forgot how to really live. You and Rex taught us that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about choosing to care for each other." As if he understood the conversation, Rex left Emma's side and came to sit between the two adults, his tail wagging contentedly. 1 year after their first meeting, Henry made an announcement that surprised everyone. The school district had offered him a full-time position teaching 7th grade mathematics, and he'd decided to accept. "But what about our tutoring sessions?" Emma asked, concerned that their special time together might end. Henry smiled. "Well, I was hoping I could still help you with homework sometimes. That is, if your mother doesn't mind me being around so much." Sarah laughed. "Henry, you're family now. You'll always be welcome here." It was Emma who asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Mr. Henry, when you start teaching full-time again, will you still need Rex to take care of you?" Henry knelt down to Emma's level, Rex immediately coming to his side. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you about Rex. Something I probably should have mentioned a long time ago." Sarah felt a flutter of concern. "What is it, Henry?" "Rex isn't just a stray dog who found me," Henry began, his hand resting on Rex's head. "He was actually a therapy dog in training before his owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Fletcher, passed away last year. Her family couldn't keep Rex, and he ended up at the shelter. But Rex had been trained to sense when people needed emotional support to provide comfort to those who were struggling." Emma's eyes widened. "So Rex knew you were sad and needed help. More than that," Henry continued. "Mrs. Fletcher used to volunteer at the elementary school, and Rex would come with her sometimes. He knew the school, knew the route, knew the schedule. When he found me, I think he was trying to figure out how to help both of us. Me with my loneliness and you with yours." Sarah felt pieces clicking into place. "That's why he knew exactly when to pick Emma up from school. That's why he seemed so purposeful about everything. Rex saw two people who needed each other," Henry said, his voice full of wonder. "He engineered our entire friendship." Emma threw her arms around Rex's neck. "You're the smartest, best dog in the whole world." Rex's tail wagged so hard his entire body wiggled with joy. As Henry settled into his new teaching position and his new apartment, the community of Willowbrook seemed to embrace the story of the teacher, the little girl, and the dog who brought them together. Henry's classroom became known as a place where struggling students could find not just academic help, but genuine care and encouragement. Emma, now 9 and significantly more confident, had become something of a local celebrity herself. Her story of kindness and her willingness to share with someone in need had inspired other children in the community to look for ways to help others. Sarah, meanwhile, found that her own life had been transformed. The friendship with Henry had helped her heal from her grief while showing her the importance of community and connection. She'd even started volunteering at the local food bank, inspired by her daughter's example of sharing what they had. On the first anniversary of their meeting in the courtyard, the three of them, plus Rex of course, decided to have a picnic in the same spot where their friendship had begun. The courtyard had been cleaned up by the city after Mrs. Patterson mentioned the story to the mayor, and it now featured a small garden and a proper bench. "It's hard to believe it's only been a year," Sarah mused, watching Emma teach Rex a new trick. "Sometimes the most important changes happen quickly," Henry replied. "Margaret used to say that angels come into our lives when we need them most, but they don't always look like we expect them to. In this case, our angel had 4 paws and a wagging tail," Sarah laughed. Rex, hearing his name in the conversation, bounded over to them with Emma close behind. The dog seemed to smile as he looked at the three people whose lives he'd helped weave together. As Autumn returned to Willowbrook, the unusual family they'd become had developed their own traditions. Sunday dinners alternated between Sarah's house and Henry's apartment. Emma spent Saturday mornings helping Henry grade papers, which she claimed was fun because she got to use a red pen. Rex continued his daily school walks, but now he split his time between both homes, seeming to understand instinctively when each human needed his comfort most. The story of their friendship had also inspired others in Willowbrook. The school district started a program pairing retired teachers with current students who needed extra support. The local animal shelter began a therapy dog program, training rescued dogs to provide comfort in schools and community centers. Mrs. Patterson, who had been watching their story unfold from the beginning, often commented that she'd never seen a stray dog with such purpose. "That Rex," she'd say to anyone who would listen. "He understood something about love and family that took the rest of us humans a lot longer to figure out." One evening, as they sat around Henry's kitchen table working on Emma's math homework, Emma looked up from her worksheet with a serious expression. "Mr. Henry," she said, "I've been thinking about something." "What's that, sweetheart?" "Before we met you, Mom and I were like a family with a missing piece, and you were like a piece looking for a family. Rex somehow knew that if he brought us all together, everyone would fit perfectly." Henry exchanged a look with Sarah over Emma's head. Out of the mouths of babes, his expression seemed to say, "And now?" Sarah asked her daughter. Emma grinned, reaching down to scratch Rex behind the ears. "Now we're not missing any pieces at all." 2 years after a stray dog first appeared on Maple Street, Willowbrook Elementary held its annual appreciation dinner for community volunteers. Henry Morrison sat at the head table, having been named Volunteer of the Year for his work with the struggling students. Sarah, now serving on the school board, watched proudly as Henry accepted his award. Emma, taller now and more confident, beamed from the audience beside Mrs. Patterson, who had become an honorary grandmother to their unconventional family. Rex, wearing a bow tie for the special occasion, sat perfectly still beside Emma's chair, his therapy dog training making him a natural at formal events. In his acceptance speech, Henry spoke about second chances and the power of unexpected friendships. He talked about how a little girl's kindness had reminded him of his purpose and how a stray dog had somehow orchestrated the most important connections of his life. "Sometimes," Henry concluded, looking directly at Sarah and Emma, "family finds you in the most surprising ways. Sometimes it comes with 4 paws and an understanding heart that sees exactly what everyone needs, even when they don't know it themselves." The applause was thunderous, but for Rex, Emma, Sarah, and Henry, the real celebration would come later, at their regular Sunday dinner, around Sarah's kitchen table, sharing stories and laughter, and the quiet contentment that comes from knowing you're exactly where you belong. As they walked home together that night, Rex trotting happily between Emma and Henry while Sarah walked beside them, it was hard to remember a time when they hadn't been family. The dog who had started as a stray had brought together 3 hearts that needed healing, creating something beautiful and lasting from what had seemed like separate, broken pieces. Emma skipped ahead, turning back to call to them, "Come on, family! Rex wants to show us the new trick I taught him." And as they hurried to catch up with the little girl and the dog who had changed all their lives, Sarah realized that sometimes the most profound love stories aren't about romance at all. They're about the unexpected connections that remind us we're never truly alone, and that family is something we create through choice, kindness, and the courage to open our hearts to love in all its forms.